Okay, today's lesson is regarding the topic of denials. Many years ago, an analyst that I respect her work said that she felt that analyzing the statements of celebrities was beneath the science of statement analysis. And I gave a lot of thought to her comment, and I noticed that a number of readers had felt the same way. And as things progressed, I had thought of the missed opportunities for large samples between politicians and celebrities. We have a very large sample of which to work from, but more importantly, comes down to the fact of psycholinguistic profiling for two reasons. First of all, it is a tool used for anonymous author identification, but it's also invaluable in employment analysis. Employment analysis allows a company to have their human resources department trained in statement analysis, or they can hire an analyst in a subcontractor form. This allows them not only to hire the best and brightest and to put people in the right jobs, but it also, and probably the most important thing about it, is that it allows them to weed out those who plan to steal from their company. Back in 2001, the Department of Justice had concluded through the process of interviewing and investigating crimes against businesses that 40% of those who stole from their company intended to do so, planned to do so, before being hired. What is amazing about that statistic is not that there's 40% of those that planned it, but that statistic does not include the myriad of fraudulent claims of exploitation, where someone fraudulently claims to have been harassed or fallen or injured or need disability for some reason or another. The bottom line is they want to separate the company from money their hands did not earn. So in employment analysis, as we build that profile, the psycholinguistic profile, the psychological profile of the person's motives, background, experiences in life, and dominant personality traits, we are able to identify those who are most likely going to fall or claim a fraudulent injury or a fraudulent claim of harassment or something like that, of discrimination, against their company, looking for settlements. Companies do it routinely today, routinely, and it's become an epidemic across the United States. Those trained in statement analysis, especially in advanced analysis where they go into employment analysis, a different paradigm for their work, are able to identify those who intend to steal or exploit or to bring trouble into a company before they're hired. We use this in particular in hiring law enforcement. This is critical because law enforcement carries lethal force in authority. So when we hire the best and brightest, we not only have better safety for our country, we have better morale for our police, and we're able to weed out those who show an acute need for respect. This is where you'll see, and it's not highlighted much by mainstream media, where you'll see a professional police officer de-escalate a hostile situation, verbally and intelligently, because part of their DNA is to protect and to serve, and they see themselves as servants. Whereas others may see themselves in a very different and dangerous category. So this lesson comes from a celebrity. This is Sanchez, and some of you New Yorkers might recognize the name. He was once a quarterback for the New York Jets. And he failed a drug test for PEDs, performance-enhancing drugs. And so look at his statement. The concept of the reliable denial is often difficult to teach in law enforcement at first. I was teaching a seminar to civil investigators years ago in which they were assigned by their agencies to investigate predominantly theft and theft of narcotic medication or sexual abuse of their clients, which would be a concurrent investigation with the state and possibly with law enforcement itself. And this was interesting because on average, this was a very intelligent group. Most of them had at least a master's degree. Many of them had their PhDs that were present. And I asked them, when you go to interview someone who is accused of stealing a patient's narcotic medication. And usually it's one for me, two for the patient, that sort of thing. They're not usually very overt in their theft. They're more clever than that. So it takes a good skill of interviewing. So I asked the seminar, how do you know if the accused didn't do it? And one man raised his hand and said, because he told me so. And he was clearly displeased about being in the training. I think he assumed this was another mandatory state training that was just eating up his valuable time. And when he said, because he told me, the audience laughed. And the audience expected me to say, well, that's ridiculous. And I said, he's exactly right. And that got not only their attention, it got his attention for the rest of the seminar. When someone didn't do it, they will tell you so. It is their priority. There is a psychological wall of truth that stands between them and the accusation. You can accuse me all you want, but I didn't do it. So if you dig for evidence, get the evidence that proves I didn't do it because I didn't do it. How do I know you didn't do it? I'm telling you the truth. So when someone says, I didn't take performance-enhancing drugs, it is a percentage of about 90% likely to be reliable. If they say, I did not take performance-enhancing drugs, I did not use performance-enhancing drugs, well, why should we believe you? Because I'm telling you the truth. It is 99.9% reliable. They look upon their own words. I did not use performance-enhancing drugs, or I did not take performance-enhancing drugs. No splitting of words. No attempt to be cute or clever. I didn't do it. I told the truth. It's over. The investigation is over. And that's our expectation. Mark Sanchez gave us a fascinating statement for a short lesson. We believe what someone tells us. They'll have to talk us out of it. This is how we draw content out of a statement. So Mark Sanchez has tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug. What should he tell us? I didn't take PEDs. Press conference is over. Well, why did you fail the test? I don't know. Go ask them. The test is wrong. I didn't take PEDs. Mark, why should we believe you? I'm telling you the truth. I didn't take PEDs. The news story goes away. End of discussion. He's behind a wall of truth that is powerful and can't be penetrated. Why? Because he didn't take them. When someone says, I never took performance-enhancing drugs, that subtle change between I did not or didn't and never is found in the psychology of time. Never is all expanding. If the question is, did you ever, someone will say, I never, as a response. It's a tainted question. We have to be very careful with our questions. Here's his statement he released. I was blindsided by the news, and I want to say unequivocally that I've never cheated or attempted to gain a competitive advantage using a banned performance-enhancing substance. During the past 9 years as an NFL player, I've been subject to 73 drug tests, and all but one have been clean. I've taken the same regimen of supplements for the past 5 years without any issues. The timing and results of my test established circumstances of unknowing supplement contamination, not the use of performance-enhancing substances. So the question is, what do you now know about Mark Sanchez? Is he telling the truth? This sounds like a very powerful denial. In fact, the more powerful sounding a denial is, the more likely it's going to be deceptive. We look at it in 3 different ways. It's either reliable or unreliable. The third way is not reliable. What that means is that the analyst needs more information, or the analyst may even consider that the person didn't do it, but hasn't realized that they need to say that they didn't do it. I had an investigation once into drug theft where the subject did not know he was accused. And he didn't bring himself to say, I didn't steal the drugs, or I didn't take the drugs. because he didn't realize he was being accused. So I tried to word the questions in a way that would prompt a denial so I could know whether he did it or not. I said, well, what would you say if you were accused? But I'm not accused. What would you tell a judge about this accusation? I wouldn't be in court. He didn't do it, but he was not able to articulate that until he realized, wait, you're here because you think, oh, I didn't take the drugs. And that was the end of it. He didn't. Okay, so what Mark says, he begins with the pronoun I, and as you know in your work, you should be circling pronouns routinely because pronouns give us the most reliable information. I was blindsided by the news, and I want to say unequivocally that I have never cheated or attempted to gain a competitive advantage using a performance-enhancing drug. He's giving away information here. He begins with the pronoun I, which means psychologically he is in this statement. As a matter of fact, you should recognize there's going to be reliable information in this statement as he places himself firmly in it. This is a good start. The pronoun I is a good start. It immediately goes south with the element of surprise he wants us to consider. I was blindsided by the news, not by the false test, by the news, and I want to say unequivocally. What is his priority? Where a person begins a statement will indicate priority, oftentimes even the reason for writing the statement. But here we see a priority. He wants to communicate, not that he didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. He wants to communicate that he was a victim of surprise. You say, that's kind of a stretch, calling him a victim. I've done enough of these statements to know when a priority is an element of surprise, and we've heard this in rape statements. I was shocked to hear the allegation, as I have been a woman's advocate in the hashtag #MeToo world for so long. Watch how this is justified by the language he uses. I was blindsided. Who was blindsided? Were his fans blindsided? Were his family blindsided? Were the, whatever team he plays for or trying out for, were they blindsided? Were the testers blindsided? Was the person that supplied the performance-enhancing drugs blindsided? He begins with an emotion of someone who had something happen to him that was unexpected. But blindsided, he doesn't say I was surprised, and that's my only way of communicating that, or I was shocked by the news. This should be something different too, but he was blindsided. He's a quarterback. When a quarterback is hit from behind and not expecting it, not only is he blindsided, but one of the linemen did not do their job to protect him. Are you beginning to see a little bit of victim status moving into this? It grows. I was blindsided by the false result of the test. No, I was blindsided by the news. News is that which is revealed. I was blindsided that this came out. Maybe he thought it was going to be private. We're going to wait for him to say, I didn't take performance-enhancing drugs. I didn't use PEDs. And we're going to wait and wait and wait. And I was blindsided by the false test. I have never used performance-enhancing drugs. Different way of saying it. Instead, he calls it the news. And instead of saying that he's never cheated or attempted to gain a competitive advantage using a banned performance-enhancing drugs, he says, I want to say. I want to say. There's a very big difference, emotions, between I'm sorry and I want to say I'm sorry. The law of economy is suspended. The move into a psychological distancing takes place. Remember, lies are triggers of emotional stress, or distress even, within all of us, including sociopaths. When people think that sociopaths do not have a conscience, therefore they are unaffected, and they're, the silence of the lambs idea where someone can concentrate and pass a polygraph. No. the polygraph is used, if the polygraph is employed using only the subject's own language, they're not going to pass it. A deceptive person is not going to pass it. It has to be contaminated. It's too good. A sociopath, and Sanchez is not a sociopath, but a sociopath feels internal stress because if I say I didn't do it, I can be seen as a liar. And so people will go a long way around to avoid telling that direct lie, and they will use language to do so. I was blindsided, it was unfair, someone didn't have my back. By the news, the information released. And I want to say, and how I want to say this, I want to say it unequivocally. He doesn't say that I'm going to say this unequivocally and then goes on to say unequivocally. It's something he desires to do. He is slowing down the pace. He's choosing his words carefully. He is loading up the statement to make it appear strong. If you've worked with police canine dogs, you'll know that a dog that shows its hackles fails out of the program. The dog's afraid. He's trying to make himself look bigger than he is. I want to say unequivocally, he is now qualifying what he wants to do. And this is a desire that is not fulfilled. That I have never cheated. Okay, you've been accused of taking performance-enhancing drugs or attempted to gain a competitive advantage using them. He has now told us of motive assigned that has not been assigned. Not only is the word never not reliable, but he has assigned a motive where no motive has been assigned to him. What does this tell us? Roger Clemens had a renaissance of his career at age 40, and it seemed like a miracle, a suspension of nature itself. He had been going downhill, and suddenly as he gained towards 40, he had this new jump on his fastball. And he was accused of using HGH and testosterone, when in combination is like an anti-aging, raising the strength levels, and low dosages of HGH, human growth hormone, will help people look younger, feel younger, sleep longer, lose body fat, but most importantly, performance-enhancing drugs on the younger not only make them stronger, but on the older, it helps slow down the aging process, and for both groups, it increases healing. The subjects who used them, like Barry Bonds, who just changed his body shape dramatically, and that was large dosages of HGH and testosterone, he had to work out intensely and eat and sleep and live workout to accomplish what he did. So later on, he'll use that in his own mind to justify, hey, I'm the one that lifted the weights. I'm the one that stayed in the batting cage longer. I'm the one that did this or did that. He would not have been able to recover as quickly as he did from the workouts if it was not for the HGH and the testosterone, exogenous testosterone, and other drugs. So Mark tells us that he didn't do this to gain a competitive advantage, because that would then make someone a victim of him. So I use this word to suggest to you, keep in the back of your mind the idea of being a victim. Then a competitive advantage would be against someone else, including others that are trying out for quarterback and other teams. This may be considered a possible projection of victimizing others. Again, the idea of victim being in his mind. So he didn't use it to gain a competitive advantage. It's very likely, you'll look into his record and see it, that he used it due to injury, to recover from an injury personally. In some cases, doctors will even prescribe it in low dosages. It was very popular many years ago in anti-aging clinics, very popular even today among Hollywood elites who can afford it, that sort of thing. But he wants you to know he didn't do it to cheat or to gain a competitive advantage. That's not the accusation. The accusation is a failed drug test. During the past 9 years as an NFL player, I have been tested 73 times. No, he wasn't tested 73 times. He was subject to testing. he was victimized by the NFL policy of having to be put through a drug test. He sees himself as a victim. He goes on in his statement to introduce the word supplement and to suggest that there may be evidence of contamination by a supplement. If that was the truth, he would say, I did not use performance-enhancing drugs. Maybe it's contaminated by a supplement. Please look into it. It's rare, but it has happened. The one time I recall a subject's language in this, someone I interviewed, was he didn't care. He said, I didn't use a particular drug he was accused of using. He later on said he'd never even seen that drug. But he failed the drug test. They went back and they checked it and they found the error. I think they brought in a different doctor who did a different testing methodology, but he didn't use. His psychological wall of truth was, I don't care what you say. I don't care what the test says. I didn't use. Something else is wrong. In this case, Mark Sanchez is either unwilling or unable to say, I didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. So we, as an analyst or an investigator, a journalist, a writer, or even if we were trying to help him in life as a therapist or a counselor, we can't say it for him. So not only do we have an unreliable denial, but we also have someone who very likely sees himself as a victim. And in AA and NA, and in most addiction counseling, someone that sees himself as a victim has a very poor prognosis for sobriety, because they see something beyond their control impacting them. It's like taking a kid and saying, you're never going to make it in life because of your skin color. Instead of inspiring and fueling someone, when you create a victim status, you not only create controversy and conflict with others, because in order for you to be a victim, there's got to be victimizers out there. But worse than that is you remove the center of control from self, who says, I can overcome this, to outside influences say, well, there's nothing I can do because I can't win. I just give up. It's a destructive pattern. So in the use of celebrities' statements, perhaps the most important element that even above and beyond the sheer volume of samples they allow for us is that in Hollywood statements, analysts are able to study disassociation on a regular basis. For an actor or an actress to be successful, they must dissociate from reality and embrace a new reality. And what happens is, and I think there's some mental health issues behind this, but what happens is some of them have a really difficult time reassociating with reality. It would be as if I played a doctor on television and I made a lot of money, or a doctor in the movies, I made a lot of money at it. So now I'm going to be appointed as an ambassador over some medical field in a foreign country. It makes very little sense to us watching it, yet politicians use it all the time. So the samples that are provided are valuable and they're numerous, but they also allow for some insight into personality traits of those who are highly successful. Mark Sanchez is a multi-millionaire quarterback, an elite quarterback, and even here we see the weakness of his statements.